Hello and welcome to NewsX World. I'm Pia and you're watching the World Report. Let's take a look at the headlines this hour. According to reports, the planned Trump-Putin summit in Budapest has been cancelled after Moscow sent a memo to Washington. Reports indicate that the decision followed a tense call between the two countries' top diplomats who did not see eye to eye on Russia's hardline demands. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has denounced Russia's massive drone strike on Ukraine's thermal plant that has claimed 3 lives. Zelensky has stated that it's outright terror, that the world must respond to this. Israel has received the bodies of 2 deceased hostages as part of its truce deal with Hamas. The identities of the hostages have been confirmed as Amiram and Shahar Baruch. Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has denounced US's nuclear testing announcement. He has stated that it is a regressive and irresponsible move that poses a serious threat to international peace and security. Pakistan and Afghanistan are set to return to the negotiating table on the 6th of November in Istanbul. Despite talks breaking down earlier, both countries have now decided to extend the fragile ceasefire along the 2,600-kilometer border till the next meeting. Following the Trump-Xi meeting at the APEC summit sidelines, the United States has agreed to suspend Trump's 24% reciprocal tariff on China for another year. Taiwanese President Lai Ching-te has once again rejected China's one country, two systems policy. He has asserted that Taiwan will resolve to defend its freedom, democracy and sovereignty. Hurricane Melissa's confirmed death toll has climbed to 49, with at least 30 dead in Haiti and 19 in Jamaica. Forecasters estimate up to $52 billion in damages. Well, viewers, those are the headlines and our top focus. According to reports, the United States has cancelled a planned summit in Budapest between President Donald Trump and Russian President Vladimir Putin. Reports suggest that the decision has come after Russia insisted on its hardline demands over Ukraine, including territorial concessions and limits on Ukrainian military. Trump has supported Ukraine's call for a ceasefire along the current lines. The move followed a tense call between U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov, after which Washington has stated that Moscow showed no willingness to negotiate. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, meanwhile, has emphasized that Ukraine is ready for talks but will not withdraw troops from additional territory. With us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert Doctorow. He is a Russian affairs expert joining us from St. Petersburg. Thank you so much for taking out time speaking to us on NewsX World. We've seen and discussed as well in length about what's taken place in the aftermath of the Alaska summit that was held earlier. The attacks have only intensified. There was a meeting that was supposed to take place in Budapest, but somehow no headway has been made with regards to that, and it seems that that now stands cancelled. In fact, we've also learned that it's the Kremlin that sent a memo to Washington stating its demands. The Russians have been very clear. They've drawn a red line as far as the territory and the territorial gains they've managed to make is concerned. The United States has backed Ukraine. It's looking for a ceasefire first. What, in your assessment, will happen next?
Well, I think it's very good that Washington has shown some decisiveness, because frankly speaking, the team Putin in Moscow has not. As recently as 3 days ago, President Putin was quoted as saying that Russia is ready to accept, quote, the American conceptualization, quote, of the end of the war. Then the next day, his foreign minister, Sergei Lavrov, said, oh my goodness, we were mistaken. We didn't understand that President Trump has gone back on his word to us in Anchorage and is not looking at the root causes of the conflict, only calling for an immediate ceasefire. So the Russians have been dancing from foot to foot. Now Mr. Trump has put an end to this nonsense.
Indeed. And there was some word, as you've put it, there was a word that Donald Trump had given in Anchorage in Alaska when the two leaders met last time. But does it really augur well if the Russians really go for Trump's word, because he's known for not living up to it?
Mr. Trump is deceptive in every way, and he has good reason to be, because he's surrounded by enemies. Even his own Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, is working against his boss, Trump. And that talk, which you talked with his Russian counterpart, Sergei Lavrov, which was described today in the Financial Times as having been very tense, it was against the policies of Mr. Trump to end the war. In these circumstances where the Europeans are united against Trump's peacemaking efforts, Congress has a large majority of members who are not in favor of the war's end anytime soon. In those circumstances, Mr. Trump is lying to everybody. My read, and I will say openly that my interpretation is an outlying interpretation. Most experts who appear on major interview programs insist otherwise about what Trump is doing. I'd say that the secret messaging of everything that Trump is doing in the last few months, including the last few days, is to Mr. Putin: get it over with, finish up the Ukraine war, and I don't care if that means that you utterly destroy Kiev. Just do it. That is his message.
Indeed, and we've also recently seen a meeting take place between Donald Trump and Xi Jinping. This happened yesterday on the sidelines of the APEC summit in Yeongju in South Korea. Ukraine came up during the discussions. However, oil was not one of the issues that were discussed during this particular meeting. Ukraine did have a lot of expectations that Donald Trump would sort of raise the matter as far as China's oil imports from Russia is concerned. That has not taken place. Meanwhile, on the other hand, we do see Trump informing reporters that China has agreed to work with the United States to end the war between Russia and Ukraine. How do you read into this?
Well, I take my cue from some professionals, professional sinologists, China experts, who have appeared in the last few days on major Russian state news programs of commentary. And their interpretation of the Xi-Trump meeting was that clearly Mr. Xi was in control. I can say that the Financial Times today is saying virtually the same thing, that the talks between the two were determined by Xi. And the issues that you have just raised were, for the Russian China experts, the result of Xi telling Trump in advance, we will not discuss the question of suspending oil purchases, we will not discuss the Ukraine war, and we will not discuss the issue of Taiwan. If you agree to that, we have a summit. If you don't, we won't. And Trump went into the meeting with Xi under those conditions.
And I also, for the benefit of our viewers, wanted your opinion on what exactly does China have to gain? Because at this point, we do know that China has not openly backed Russia's war against Ukraine. Unlike North Korea, on the other hand, that has sent troops. China has not even sent military hardware. But there are dual-use items such as fiber optic cables that have been sent, lithium-ion batteries that are used to manufacture fiber optic drones as well, something that China has been supplying to the Russians. It's, of course, also been importing oil. What are China's interests in all of this?
China is very prudent. China is in a trade tug-of-war with the United States. The United States is the single biggest customer, or second biggest customer after the EU, of Chinese export sales of manufacturers. And therefore, China has a great deal to risk by an open rift with the United States on every possible issue. It tries to limit the areas of conflict as best it can to have something resembling stability. China has, you ask, what has China supplied? Well, Russians would be walking if it weren't for China. Russia has replaced all European manufacturers and other Asian manufacturers like Korea and Japan in supplying cars to the Russian automobile market. As I say, without the Chinese stepping in massively and providing the Russian market with vehicles, all Russians would be walking today, not driving in cars. So let's start with that. Then you look at the military aspect, what supplies, bits and pieces. Obviously, China does not want to appear to be the North Korea supplier of major weapon systems to Russia, and Russia doesn't need it. They need some subcomponents, as you've mentioned, that precisely fiber optic drones have become a major innovation in this war in the last half year. So these are bits of assistance that are appreciated in Russia, but they're not decisive.
All right, sir, I request you to stay on with us. There's some other crucial development that we're tracking as far as this particular war is concerned. We're now learning that Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has issued a statement over Russia's recent strikes on a Ukrainian thermal that killed 3 and injured 1 in the eastern city of Sloviansk. President Zelensky has described the attacks in the Donetsk region as strictly terror. He stated that the primary target of the overnight Russian drone and missile attacks was energy infrastructure. In recent months, Russia has consistently targeted Ukrainian energy grids, and these attacks have left hundreds of people without power in several regions. Ukraine has done so as well, targeting key Russian oil refineries in its territory as well. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has meanwhile stated that energy workers have been working extensively from Zaporizhia and Mykolaiv region to Vinnytsia. However, while conveying his condolences for the victims, Zelensky has called on world leaders to respond against Russia. Listen in to what he had to say.
Зараз, кілька годин тому, був удар по Слов'янській ТЕС, удар російських бомб. На жаль, 2 людини загинули. Мої співчуття. Є поранені. І це виключно терор. Нормальні так не воюють, і на таку російську війну повинна бути належна реакція світу.
President Zelensky has also stated that the strikes were complex and difficult to counter and reported the use of more than 600 drones, including 400 Shaheeds. He added that 2/3 of the missiles were shot down, while a few managed to hit their targets. He's also raised the issue of Russian oil exports, calling them the basis of what he claims is Russian arrogance. He noted that India and China are to reduce imports of Russian oil in order to make sure that the war ends. However, his statement on extensive use of Shahed drones by Russia indicates deeper Russia-Iran defense cooperation. Listen in to what Zelensky has said.
Удар був складний, комбінований, спеціально прорахований, що було важко протидіяти. Були і ракети, включно з балістикою та аеробалістичними, 52 ракети загалом. Більше 600 ударних дронів, із них шахеди близько 400. Більшість дронів знешкодили, 2/3 ракет теж збито.
Stay with us on the broadcast is Mr. Gilbert. Dr. Rao, interesting statement coming in from Zelensky. He's in fact noted that several of these drones are the Shahed drones, the HESA Shahed 136 drones, also known as Jaran 2 in Russia. These are Iranian-designed loitering munitions that Iran has been providing to Russia for quite a while as far as this war is concerned. But I wanted to understand from you, as far as the Iran-Russia equation is concerned, how long do you think Iran can continue its supply, considering its own stockpiles have been depleted ever since its war with Israel?
It's not clear how many of these drones are actually coming from Iran. As you mentioned, Iran helped the Russians to set up a manufacturing facility inside Russia. And so I assume that most, if not all, of the drones that are in discussion are coming from within Russia, not being exported by Iran. But this is a distraction. What we are overlooking, and intentionally overlooking because of the way Mr. Zelensky conducts his statements to the world press, is that the Russians at any time can do something that they have not yet done, and which will change the war dramatically. They can call it, they can declare war on Kiev. This still remains, formally speaking, a limited operation that's called a special military operation. It is not all-out war. In all-out war conditions, Russia will level Kiev to the ground, and it can do it in a few days, and it may end up doing it. So we are just witnessing now a lot of firing back and forth between the Russians and the Ukrainians trying to destroy energy infrastructure of the other side. The Ukrainians have been rather successful in making important strikes and damaging a fairly large proportion, about 20, 30% of Russian refinery capacity. That is a big deal. And they're doing it with their own drones, since they don't have missiles, but they're doing it very effectively. So these exchanges by Russia to Ukraine, by Ukraine to Russia, of attacks on infrastructure are continuing, but they do not yet constitute a full-blown war. In full-blown war, nobody from the EU will dare set foot in Ukraine. This diplomatic tourism that's been going on, as if Ukraine is a normal place, it isn't. At any moment, the city can be destroyed by the Russians. So let's keep that in mind.
Indeed, and I also wanted to digress a little bit and rake up the United States' recent decision to resume nuclear testing. Now, the US has not ratified the Comprehensive Test Ban Treaty that was brought about in 1996. Donald Trump has stated that it's an important national security decision to resume these tests after a pause of 33 years. We've seen a reaction from Iran. Iran has called this regressive, irresponsible. Russia too has reacted, stating that Trump has pointed out to some recent tests that Russia has carried out, and Russia hopes that Trump has not referred to the Burevestnik tests because this missile does not fall under the category of nuclear weapons tests restricted by international treaties. All in all, I wanted to understand from you, what do you make of Trump's recent decision? What sort of signal is he trying to send? Is this mere posturing?
It was posturing. It was disinformation. The reality is the Russians have not tested any bombs. Yes. And he was speaking about bombs. But the United States is going to start testing again our bombs. The Russians have, in the last week, tested 2 nuclear engine-powered delivery systems for bombs. One of them is a drone submarine, and the other is called Poseidon, and the other is the Burevestnik, which is a nuclear-powered cruise missile. It is a cruise missile. It's not a bomb. It is capable of carrying nuclear warheads. So he is intentionally confusing the engines that are powering these with bombs. They're not bombs. No one other than North Korea has conducted tests of bombs in the last few years. So Mr. Trump is speaking on the basis of ignorance or propaganda value, not stating the reality. That the United States wants to restart testing has different reasons. One of them is it fears that its stockpile of nuclear weapons doesn't work, which is quite possible because it's quite old. The Russians have, in the last few years, completely modernized their nuclear arsenal. The United States has not. By the expert opinion of Russian arms scholars, the United States would have to invest between $1 and $2 trillion to renovate its nuclear weapons. And of course, testing is part of that process.
All right, so with that, I would like to thank you for taking out time and sharing your analysis with us on NewsX World. With that, viewers, we're shifting focus to more news coming in. We're now learning that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has spoken with his Indian and Chinese counterparts, beginning a series of face-to-face meetings at the ASEAN Defense Summit in Malaysia. has stated that he's told Chinese Defense Minister Dong Jun that the United States would stoutly defend its interests and maintain the balance of power in the Indo-Pacific. Hegseth has also told Dong that the United States is concerned about China's activities in the disputed South China Sea and around Taiwan in particular. Meanwhile, he's also described their meeting as good and constructive. These remarks have come after Donald Trump had earlier stated that Taiwan did not come up in his meeting with Chinese President Xi Jinping that had taken place on the sidelines of the APEC summit in South Korea. With us on the broadcast is Ms. Shruti Das Gupta, international affairs expert, joining us from New Delhi. Thank you so much for taking our time and speaking to us on NewsX World. I'll be dissecting these developments piece by piece. First up, what's taken place between the meeting between Secretary Hegseth and his Chinese counterpart, Dong Jun. I want to understand from you, Donald Trump has just wrapped up his key Asia tour. He was in Malaysia for the ASEAN summit first, then he headed to Tokyo for a bilateral with Sanai Takeichi, and then to South Korea for the APEC Leaders Summit, where he'd also met Lee Jae-myung, and of course the bilateral meeting that had taken place yesterday with Xi Jinping. The elephant in the room is, of course, China, the aggressive posture it has adopted in the Indo-Pacific. What do you make of this particular meeting, the sort of signal that Hegseth is now sending? Because, of course, Taiwan did not come up in the meeting between Xi Jinping and Donald Trump, but it has definitely come up in this particular interaction.
Greetings to you and your viewers, Pia. What I understand is that without having a conversation on Taiwan, there is no way any security guarantees or trade conversations can be held between USA and China. The fact that Trump did not mention it and now Pete Hegseth does, it shows that they knew that it would not be viewed very positively while mentioning it in front of Xi Jinping. And so they chose to do it at a lower level of the defense ministers. Well, he's not a defense minister, he is the director of war, Department of War. So they basically tried to posture it correctly by saying that we would be we are aware of the activities that are happening, and they are silently signaling that Taiwan should not be made into an issue by China, or they will have a problem at their hands. Because Trump didn't mention it and only Hegseth did, it shows that they're aware that there is not much happening apart from posturing from both the nations. And they are pretty much okay with all posturing as long as it remains at that. Hegseth also kind of mentioned that they are completely aware of all the hydrographical spying as well as research ships that they keep sending around in the South China Sea and even extending towards the Indo-Pacific by saying that they are doing research but are actually spying on military installations of individual nations as well as US installations. So they've kind of hinted at all of that through this particular comment that they will not they will always take care of their interests first. So they're putting China on the warning that we know what's happening. Please do not go forth, or else we will have to start taking more aggressive stance, both militarily and politically.
Indeed, and I also wanted to address what's taking place in South Asia and the larger interests that United States and China have. We've recently seen that Afghanistan and Pakistan have agreed to keep the ceasefire on hold till the next meeting that is now slated to take place in Istanbul on the 6th of November. We do know that United States is eyeing the Bagram air base. They're also eyeing at recovering the arms that they had left in Afghanistan during their abrupt withdrawal in 2021. China, of course, has its own interests as far as the BRI is concerned. It's keeping a close watch on what's taking place in Afghanistan through the Wakhan corridor. It has its own CPEC interests in Pakistan. Pakistan, of course, moving towards the Trump administration in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. What do you think could have come up in this meeting with regards to that, and what, in your assessment, is the larger game plan that the two nations have as far as Afghanistan is concerned? Because we do know that Afghanistan is known as the graveyard of empires.
Well, it is the graveyard of empires, very rightly put by you, but as of now, I don't think there is much happening. Why China does not have, has not played any of its cards in that respect. And I don't think it became probably a bone of contention and even a bone of mention in these kind of conversations. What I do know is that within the last 24 hours, India was granted immunity from sanctions for the next 6 months for using Iran's Shahar port to connect to Afghanistan. So US understands that India is important, one. The other part is Russia has offered military as well as political help to Afghanistan in case there are foreign interests that are interfering in its internal politics. So Russia has taken on a larger stance in this particular conversation related to Afghanistan. China has decided to stay mum because the conflict happens to be with its all-weather friend Pakistan, and Pakistan is happily sitting in USA's lap. So they are, as of now, not commenting on it because the particular aggression is not in favor of China, and they would rather monitor the situation than show their cards and make any kind of cooperation evident on either sides.
All right, ma'am, I request you to stay on with us. We're tracking some other very crucial developments. We're now learning that U.S. Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth has announced that the United States has signed a 10-year defense framework agreement with India. The agreement, signed with Indian Defence Minister Rajnath Singh at the ASEAN Defence Ministers meeting in Kuala Lumpur, is now seen as a significant step towards regional stability. It also aims to enhance coordination, information sharing and technological cooperation as well. The meeting followed recent tensions over US tariffs on Indian goods, which led India to pause US defense equipment purchases as well. The two sides are expected to discuss India's future military hardware plans as well. That is not all. The both leaders have also made some remarks. Let's listen in to what they've had to say.
I'll just say real quick, I want to express the gratitude to the Minister Singh, for his time, for the partnership we have with India. It's one of the most consequential, the U.S.-Indian relationship in the world. And our strategic alignment is built on shared interests, on mutual trust, and a commitment to a secure and prosperous Indo-Pacific, which is precisely the conversation we had. It was the world's oldest democracy and the world's largest. And this new 10-year defense framework, which we signed, is ambitious. It's a significant step for our two militaries, a roadmap for deeper and even more meaningful collaboration ahead. It underscores America's long-term commitment to our shared security and our strong partnership between our countries. We have a major defense partnership that is ongoing and made even more powerful by this agreement. So, sir, thank you.
Thank
very
you
much.
वैसे एक्सेलेंसी आपसे 3 बार टेलीफोनिक वार्ता हमारी हो चुकी है और जब आपसे एडीएम के साइडलाइंस पर व्यक्तिगत रूप से मिलकर मुझे बेहद खुशी हुई है और इस अवसर पर डिफेंस फ्रेमवर्क की शाइनिंग मैं समझता हूं कि उसके परिणाम स्वरूप आज एक नए अध्याय का प्रारंभ होगा। इन्हीं शब्दों के साथ मैं पुनः आपको धन्यवाद देता हूं और मेरा पूरा विश्वास है कि आपकी लीडरशिप में भारत और यूएस के रिश्ते और अधिक मजबूत होंगे।
Still with us on the broadcast is Ms. Shruti Das Gupta. Interesting statement there by Pete Hegseth. He's spoken about mutual trust. He's also at large spoken about the Indo-Pacific. There's been little mention about South Asia as such. As you pointed out, Pakistan has now gone into the lap of the United States of America in the aftermath of Operation Sindoor. But speaking about trust itself, we do know that engine deliveries for the GEF 404 engines for the LCA Tejas were delayed considerably. Of course, supply chains were touted as the main reason, but this is something that many experts have stated was being used as leverage by the United States of America to stall India's indigenous aircraft production ambitions. What do you make of this statement? How do you read into it?
Well, this is not the first US-India Defense Pact. We've had one in 2005, 2015. The 2015 one just ended, and that's why we've signed the 2025 one. And each time we've layered upon this particular cooperation, we've added layers of cooperation in all of this. This time, what I see differently is that there has been a mention of tech cooperation. So I do not know at what level the tech transfer will be there, but there have been mention of tech cooperation, AI-driven tech development, co-sharing of information regarding that. We also know that while Pakistan is sitting there and guiding a lot of US conversations, Pakistan is only relevant for CENTCOM for
Yes.
USA. It is not relevant in terms of Indo-Pacific. For the Indo-Pacific to govern the expansionist ideas of China, they need India very, very badly. And hence, this cooperation had to be signed. And for me, what I noticed is that put in the compact that was part of February 2025 conversation also is part of this US defense pact, which basically shows that a little bit of defense trade has also been included into it with focus on supply chain management as well as assurances from both sides that they need to work together. Because an expansionist China is not good for India. Although we have the RIC Trioka kind of Russia pushing that ideology, which would probably destabilize USA's hegemony in worldwide, but India finds itself very uncomfortable with China, despite having civilizational dialogues with them going back millennia, if not centuries. So it is difficult for us to find ourselves at not in a very friendly and trustworthy space with a neighbor and a civilizational nation as China. We would like to build upon it, but we will only put our money behind those desires and wishes once we realize that it does not pose a threat to India, and China has not proven itself as such. So USA needs India to control the Indo-Pacific, and that is why this deal has come forth. It has been layered upon, new cooperations has been added, new exercises will be conducted, joint military cooperations will be part of it. But in an overall capacity, from what I understand, it is just a renewal of what has already happened. It is a new chapter, yes, but how big a leap it is yet to be seen.
Indeed, as you've mentioned, the pact between the two countries is expected to deepen military interoperability, enable the seamless use of each other's bases as well, logistics and maintenance facilities. It will also include, as you pointed out, using artificial intelligence, development of next-gen projects in drones and AI-based warfare. But at this point, can the US, and really does it augur well for the United States to look at India as a partner only through the Indo-Pacific concerns and then completely brush aside what's taking place between India and Pakistan and just focus on Pakistan and using it in order to draw its own advantages in the CENTCOM? Does it risk alienating India over there?
I completely understand your confusion. It is part of what the entire global analyst community is probably feeling, that how do you hyphenate India and Pakistan by trying to position your policies as well as your trade and tariff usage, weaponization in India and Pakistan, then separate them by saying that, okay, Pakistan is only relevant for my particular part of the world, which is the Central Asia version, and India is relevant for the Indo-Pacific relation. So you want to use both nations, and USA is known for tactics like that. Yes. That is why India is kind of very, we want good partners, but we, again, as with China, we are very, very careful with what we promise USA. In fact, if I go back beyond history, USA has been not such a helpful partner to India as compared to Russia. Russia has always been there, comes back, backs you down as a nation, as a friendly nation, as a cooperative partner. But on the other side, USA always picks Pakistan's side because it feels that its interest in the CENTCOM is much more important than its interest in the Indo-Pacific. While countering China is important, controlling the oil barons and all the other conflicts in the Middle East seem to be of more importance. So when they are asked to pick between the two, they always go towards the Pakistani side. And that's why India needs to be a little more cautious. There is a use of military base, but I do not know to what extent, because the entire details of it is not available to me. But I wish I do get my hands on that particular piece to understand exactly how much are we giving in, or are we getting in return of usage of bases? Are we be using US military bases in Indonesia, in the other places to counter China, or is it the other way around? Does US get access to Indian bases? So I'd like to know how deep is this particular military base cooperation, because it does tend to make it difficult in an India-Pakistan equation.
And one last opinion I wanted from you. This is regarding the recent sanctions waiver for the Chabahar port in Iran that India has managed to secure for 6 months from the United States of America. Do you think this is sort of now setting the tone for reinvigorating the defense partnership between the two countries?
It is, and they have probably realized that it is not very easy to make India bow to their terms, because the Indian market, though they tried to manipulate the tariff partnership, they found that the Indian market is very self-sufficient, even though we have loss of FDI, foreign direct investors, we have FII problems, we've had tariffs levied on it, but we've still survived and we are still racing ahead. So instead of missing out on this great train of India's progress, it is better to cooperate and give a little before you ask for more.
All right, ma'am. With that, I would like to thank you for taking out time sharing your analysis of what's taking place in Kuala Lumpur. Shifting focus to what's happening in New York. Heavy rains have hit New York City, claiming at least 2 lives and causing widespread flooding. New York's Mayor Eric Adams has stated that a record rainfall has taken place for just a span of 10 minutes. Central Park saw 1.85 inches of rain, while LaGuardia and Newark airports recorded over 2 inches, disrupting flights. Authorities have reported flooding across the city and have issued coastal flood warnings for the Bronx, Brooklyn and Queens. Officials are also urging residents to stay cautious as cleanup and recovery efforts continue. Well, viewers, due to paucity of time, this is all we have for this bulletin. More news and updates on the other side. Stay tuned on NewsX World.